Hello, I'm Donald Leggett, and welcome to the latest London South East CEO interview. I'm joined again by Brad George, and he is the CEO at Orosur Mining, a London-listed South American metals explorer with projects in Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina. In March, we heard that phase 2 of Anza was well underway, with $2 million received from Angnico. However, it would take several months to complete. So far, so good. Then on 4th of May, you told investors that Angnico had effectively placed Anza on care and maintenance. We're very grateful that today Brad George joins us from London to add some clarity. Welcome, Brad. It is a pleasure as always to see you.
Donald, been far too long.
It has indeed. Now let's crack on. Let's take the recent May RNS first. There seems to be some confusion about the care and maintenance announcement. So what did you understand by it, and what was the rationale for it?
Well, I'll start by just correcting you. It is obviously Newmont and Agnico. So there are two parties here, and that's key. The rationale really was to clear the decks and allow us to speak. Our JV, as with all JVs, anything legal must be in writing, and we've received nothing in writing about the future of the JV. But we have chats, and those chats are ongoing. But recently, after they gave us $2 million, those chats began to become more tangible in terms of their view of maybe moving on or moving out of the project. And that put us in a very difficult position as a company. We were trying to plan future work on other projects, and we can't do that without really knowing what Anza is doing. And we took the view that, having been told this verbally, we were now offside. We couldn't really speak to the market. Obviously, you would ask us questions, and no comment isn't going to work. So we took the view that this was sufficiently tangible now that we had to come to the market and say, look, things have changed. There is uncertainty, but we would rather talk about the uncertainty than remain silent. So it's purely a question of clearing the deck so that we can begin to now talk again.
Okay, let's talk then. As far as you know, what are the reasons for Newmont and Agnico wanting to wind back in Colombia? Take a broad brush view of this.
Well, clearly I'm not privy to the inside issues. I mean, it's the key thing is that both of these companies are now very different beasts to what they were when they'd signed up to our JV. 2018, Newmont signed up and they merged with Goldcorp 2019, and now they're doing their Newcrest merger. Agnico came in 2020, and then they merged with Kirkland Lake 2021, I think it was, and then Yamana. So both of the companies are now more than twice as big as they were when they first came to the project. So they have minimal options to deal with and assess: exploration options, development options. Couple that with Colombian politics, which is not helpful, but not as bad as the market might make out. The new leftist government is very anti-oil and gas and coal, and is being a bit antagonistic toward big companies. But governments come and go. Smaller firms are working, mining, carrying on. But I think that political difficulty came at exactly the wrong time, when particularly Newmont was about to absorb Newcrest and just thought, we have a full plate of projects. They were looking for one to get rid of, and I guess Colombia was an obvious target at exactly the wrong moment in time. That's my take anyway. Okay.
From what you're saying, it sounds as though phase 2 was never actually legally entered into. You had chats, as you describe it, but nothing in writing. Will it ever be put in writing? Will phase 2 ever legally happen?
That somewhat depends. So they've met all the obligations of phase 1, and they have an absolute legally binding right to move into phase 2. And they've told us in writing that they will move to phase 2, and they've given us $2 million. So they've met all the obligations. But the process to move to phase 2 has been ongoing for some time. That is creating a new company, moving the assets across. That's still going, albeit going a little more slowly. We have intentionally slowed that back a bit to say, well, if you want to leave, why are we doing this? So yes, their right is ironclad. As long as they meet the obligations going forward, they're fine. But we're saying, well, let's chat about this and say, well, if you want to move on, maybe there are better ways of doing it. So for the moment, we are moving. That's secure, but we're keeping our minds open as to where that might lead.
Is there a time frame for them to actually legally enter into this deal? That's what the chat boards are talking about. Is there a time frame?
There isn't, and I've made the comment to others that that's possibly a weakness in the JV that we inherited. There is a certain ambiguity to how long that can take. we have our view that if they drag on just to be a pain, then we have the right to or the recourse to legal action to force their hand. They have no reason to delay. I mean, every delay, it costs them money to maintain the projects. We don't see that as being a problem. I commented before that the new company formation is slow because we want to get it right. Otherwise, there are or could be some tax implications. So I'd rather be right than fast. But we certainly are pushing to get this done as fast as we can. And I would hope the next few months, but to a degree, it's out of our hands. Big companies are not grease lightning. They do move slowly, and obviously with Newmont having its hands full with a bigger merger, we have to push hard to get ourselves heard.
What does care and maintenance look like, Brad?
That is to preserve the assets, to preserve the camp, preserve the core, and to preserve the reasonably positive community relationship that we spent years building up. I mean, we don't have any major assets, everything's in the ground, but we need to make sure that we don't, one, lose the camp or the facilities, the people are happy, and that we maintain our current status as having no artisanal mining, which I think is key. So, that's obviously a problem in further north, other projects in the area. We have no issues of that nature, and we'd like to keep it that way. So it's just keeping everything ready to go and safe so that we can turn it back on again quite quickly.
Okay, you're obviously considering your options. What might those options be as you see them? And, is there a timeline for those options?
Yeah, look, in my view, and again, this is me speaking on behalf of Agnico and Newmont, so take it with a grain of salt. The option might be one, we carry on. Now they've already spent well in advance of phase one, and by the middle of this year, they will already have spent essentially the first year of phase two's money. So they can sit back and relax for a year, having already spent their $4 million. Would they? Maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe they can sit back, wait to see how things change in Colombia, and wait to absorb the Newcrest merger. That might take some time. Option two, they find a buyer. Now they can do that. That's their entitlement. They would need to do phase two corporately first in order to have something to sell. So that would take some months to go yet. And I don't think that the number of buyers of that project is a large one, particularly given that any buyer would need to absolutely adhere to the letter of the agreement. So to a smaller company, that agreement is quite onerous in terms of obligation, spending money. So they may do that, but I think they may struggle to find a buyer who would pay what they might think it's worth. Option three is that we reassume control, and that could happen in a number of ways. We could buy it off them, we could dilute them down. There's a number of ways, and that in my view is, well, I would say this, it is our best option. It's sort of the fastest and the cheapest. So we've presented our case, and we'll see which way the issue falls.
Okay, which it flows into my next question. If you did take back control, as you said, it's theoretically your preferred option. How would you do that? Do you have the balance sheet for it? And what would you do with it? What would you
we
do
do?
with the asset?
And obviously, we might want to raise more money, but we have the money at the moment, so we're fine. There are two issues. One is that I would like at last to be in charge of my own destiny, and I'm sick and tired of sitting in the back seat. It's been a very difficult couple of years just sitting back watching these big guys make decisions that I wouldn't make. Not wrong decisions, just bigger, because they're big company, they do things differently. So I would like the project back so that we're in charge of the project again, and we run our own news flow and our own process. But secondly, it's a good project. If we set aside the politics, set aside the history and the JV and where we currently are, if we just looked at this project as it stands today, geologically, exploration-wise, and said, well, would a junior company want that project? And the answer is, bloody hell yes, they'd bite your arm off for it. I mean, it's a superb project for a smaller company. Yeah, a bigger firm, obviously.
It's still a potential tier one gold mine project.
But obviously, being a smaller firm, we have different needs, different size hurdles. Agnico and Newmont now, as they grow, their size hurdle becomes huge. They now need 10 million ounces. That's where things stand. But to me, as a junior company, that project is absolutely, gold.
The economics are still phenomenal.
Oh yeah, well, the economics and the ability to have walk-up drill targets is something you don't find very often. So I would view that project technically as really something I'd love to get my teeth back into. So yeah, that is my absolutely preferred option.
Okay. Are you sure this just isn't Newmont and Agnico playing hardball, negotiating tactic? That's what some of the boards have interpreted it as.
I can't be sure of that, obviously. I would be surprised. I think it would be nice to be so important that they would do that, but I think companies of these size, they probably don't even know that we exist. The issue, I think, more is Newmont. I mean, Newmont, we've always known was looking for the door, not looking for the door, but they obviously brought in Agnico for a reason, because they were, a bit of two minds. Agnico came in because they had Newmont paying half the bills. So it was always this sort of joint agreement. Newmont, I think, are the ones who are now saying, look, we've now got Newcrest, or it's a done deal largely. So they've sort of moved on now to bigger and better things. Agnico are saying, well, do we want to go alone? And the obligations financially are quite substantial. So I think it's simply that Agnico want to be there, but they're not entirely comfortable with having to shoulder the financial burden. So that's my view. Are they playing silly buggers? Look, they might, but I suspect that honestly, we're so small they wouldn't bother.
Okay, so let's talk about the business as usual parts of Orosur. If you could give us an update on tin in Brazil, just a brief update, that would be very useful. Thank you.
Well, we can obviously talk more on Monday with the webinar. I can provide ideas. Look, tin's progressing well. Again, it's a huge area that's never seen modern exploration, but it's a massive producing area, largely from artisanals and cooperatives, local cooperatives, who've never explored. So we know it's endowed, but there's no underlying base data to examine where to go. They simply ran around, found tin and mined, and never did any work. So our first task was just to go and do the basic, boring, underlying exploration, collect the regional base data, magnetics, geochemistry, and then narrow things down. So given the size of the area, that was a slow process. We've covered 3,000 square kilometres. It's over 100 kilometres of roads and driving. It's been 6 months just doing the work. And now we think we're at a point where we can go back in June and narrow down on some very nice targets. So I'll talk more on Monday, but I like tin as a commodity. It's the forgotten metal. It's very valuable. It's becoming much harder to find. I know the market's a bit two-minded about this, but I think that project is moving forward quite well.
Okay, gold in Argentina. The markets are not in two minds about gold.
Interestingly, the one takeaway we took from PDAC in March was that that's now the place to be, Argentina. I mean, it's rather ironic to think of a country with that checkered history economically and politically is actually becoming the place to be in South America. Everybody was there. The government was there. It's really taking off quite substantially. Copper exploration, lithium, of course. And the gold sector in the south is really becoming quite substantial. So I would like to say we're very clever at getting in early, but I guess it was more luck than anything else. But that project, I think, and again, I'll talk more on Monday, is really quite pleasing to me. I know the market doesn't care because it's pre-drilling and the market only values drilling, but it's showing all the signs that we would expect to see from a large epithermal system, exactly as we would expect in that region. We've seen Cerro Negro, and thanks to Newmont for inviting us to Cerro Negro, which is the biggest mine in the region. We went underground. We've seen how these things look. We know what to look for. We now know what the target style is. And we've gone out back to our project and said exactly what we would expect to find were that system in play. So that's moving ahead really well. We won't be drilling there until later in the year, early next year, depending on permits. But in terms of structure, in terms of geochemistry, in terms of scale, it's looking really, really sexy. Sexy to a geologist. I mean, probably less so to an old journalist. But we know that project is looking really interesting. Newmont have been on site. We're going to share data so they keep abreast of it. There's no JV on the line. We're keeping it to ourselves. But it ticks all the boxes in terms of why we did that deal. Big land holding. All the geological signs, very low cost to get in, and probably the one that everyone's surprised about. We have the right to go to 100%, which is everyone's quite taken aback by that. So that's a very rare thing to have that ability to get the project 100%, and that gives us options. So at the end of this year, we'll have all the data done. We'll have drill targets. and then we'll assess, do we do it ourselves or do we bring in a major or whatever? So it's moving well, but I'll explain more on Monday.
Okay, let's draw a line under it, and let's get back to you on Monday at 6 o'clock. That was very helpful, Brad. Thank you so much. If you're an Orosur investor, don't forget to check out the OMI chat board on our website. And as always, please do follow us on Twitter. That's @London Southeast. If you want to see more interviews like this one, then register on London Southeast YouTube to receive alerts for interviews and webinars. And thanks to you all for being a great audience. We're very grateful to have your time. Thank you.